That might be better. Thank you. Green light means go. All right. Well, thank you and welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Tom Wright and I'm the president and CEO of Covenant Woods. And on behalf of our entire Covenant Woods family, I'd like to welcome each of you to our annual remembrance service. This is a sacred time to gather and reflect. Helen Keller said, "What we have once enjoyed deeply, we can never lose. All that we love deeply becomes a part of us." And there are many moments, as I'm sure you know, when someone speaks fondly of a member who has passed or tells a funny story or something interesting, and just by speaking their name into the conversation, it feels as if they're still very present. And this evening, as we speak the names of those who we have lost in the last year, know that we consider them very much a permanent part of the Covenant Woods family. We miss them, we mourn them, and we celebrate them. And we are ever grateful for the indelible mark they've left on our community and on our hearts. Thank you. Chaplain Steve.
I'm Chaplain Steve Scott, and it was a privilege to care for many of these residents here, and it's an honor for me to remember them and just say a few words and light a candle in remembrance and to celebrate their lives. And so to begin, I ask that we start with this reading. It's a way of honoring their presence around us in our midst and the things they've done to us. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tunes. When orchids brighten the earth and darkest winter has turned to spring, may this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart. And so let us remember our friends that made Covenant Woods a community. I began with Martin Dean Cheatham. Dean moved into Covenant Woods in December of 2020, and during many of our COVID isolation protocols, that's when he came to Covenant Woods. This made it difficult to make many new friends, and as an alumni of Virginia Tech, if it had been a different time, he would have enjoyed meeting fellow Tech players here and watching the football games. He did love watching the football games at JMU. He had 2 grandsons playing there. He always loved to watch NASCAR as well. And we light this candle. He was very much a part of New Kent County, I believe, in the business community, and very well thought of. And we missed something during that COVID time, not knowing him in a better way. And so we light this candle in thankful remembrance of Mr. Cheatham and what he brought to our community. Yeah, Janice Pritchard. Janice and Bob moved to Covenant Woods in 2013. And when she wasn't reading, Janice enjoyed singing with the Covenant Woods Choir and walking our beautiful grounds. She also enjoyed spending time with friends at Fireside. Janice's friends will also tell you that she possessed a compassionate ear and was a gifted organizer, having worked at the point of supporting the office of Vice President of George Bush in the West Wing. She was very much in the office in D.C. Janet, we light this candle in remembrance of Janet and what she brought to our community. Is Bob here by chance? Oh, Bob, come on up. Yeah, I didn't see you come in. Bob is Janice's husband. Yeah. And Tom Handy. Tom came to Covenant Woods with Joyce in 2005, his wife. Mr. Handy enjoyed talking with residents around meals and traditions. He was a proud alumni of VMI and wore it on his rollator when he went around. He loved to read. You see him in the library quite a bit. He loved to read the Westerns. And he also enjoyed spending time in the library and discussing current events. And we light this candle in remembrance of Tom Handy. And he would tell stories of the Korean War as well when he had a chance. Is anybody here from the family of Tom Handy? Yeah, okay. Yeah. And John Hardy. John came to Covenant Woods with Ellen in 2015. John enjoyed talking to the other stamp collectors in the community. He enjoyed playing bridge, and he looked forward to singing with the Creaky Crooners. This picture of him is in Fayetteville when he was a stage manager for the local theater, and he had the responsibility of making sure the scenes were organized and the sound checks were just right. Mrs. Hardy, Ellen Hardy, did all the makeup for the plays as well. And so, did Ellen make it to the service? She's in healthcare, and I didn't know if she's going to, okay. So we light this candle in honor of John, who's much a part of our community and will be missed. And Grace Wood. Grace was one of the original residents that moved into Covenant Woods with Libby Matthews in 2001. She was very much community-minded. She kept a directory of all the original residents and took an interest in how each and every one was doing. While living on health care, Grace made her rounds to give support where she could. She read letters to one of our other residents, Mary Will, who couldn't see, would read to her in terms of what cards she had received. She would visit other residents who were not doing well on health care. Grace also loved the many games and activities and was very supportive of the Manor East recreation community. In fact, Brooke, the recreation provider, said many residents said she was the glue that held the programs together with her personality. And so we light this candle in honor of Grace, who has made us a part of a community. And Mary Will Mays came to Covenant Woods with her husband, Dr. Mays. They came in 2001. From this picture, you can see that Mary Will just loved the outdoors. She loved walking around the pond and reading before her eyes gave way, and watching sports, especially baseball. She'd be enjoying the the series right now, probably. I enjoyed Mary Will's curiosity and her humility that was able to meet people in an honest level. She was very down to earth. And while on healthcare, Mary Will enjoyed the music programs and talking with staff and developed close relationships with a few of the staff as she became more dependent. And so we light this candle in honor of Mary Will and what she brought to our community. Harold Singleton. Harold and Helen came to Covenant Woods in 2015. Mr. Singleton enjoyed walking the grounds, working as an elementary school principal in Henrico County for 30 years. He understood and appreciated the importance of learning, and he loved to read. He was an avid reader, mainly of historical works. He also followed the stock market closely. He was an avid supporter of the UVA teams. In fact, Helen was telling me during the National Basketball Championship a few years ago, his blood pressure was all over the place as they eventually won that national championship. He enjoyed time at Fireside, chatting with people at the bar, and took an interest in other residents and the staff as well. And so we light this candle. And I invite Helen up if you would, to come and receive the rose in honor of Harold Singleton and what he's brought to our community. Yeah. Erlene moved to Covenant Woods around 2012, and initially she came to assisted living and moved in with her husband Hilton to kind of care for him. And then when he went to healthcare, she transitioned over to Manor West, an independent apartment. While on assisted living, she was very much involved in the activities. Also, when they moved to independent living, she still stayed involved. Erlene enjoyed the activities, and with her daughter Beverly and her son-in-law Eric, they hosted the Oktoberfest and assisted living and the chocolate tasting contest, and very much enjoyed being a help to others to give them a sense of connection and joy. When Erlene was not caring for Hilton as an advocate, she enjoyed spending time with her daughter Beverly and with her grandsons. And if you ever visited Erlene in her apartment, you would always see a Christmas tree up with all of her dolls around the Christmas tree, because Christmas was very important to her, and it was a time that was important to her past and how she cared for her family. She kept a Christmas tree up also in her healthcare apartment as well when she moved over there to show her spirit of generosity. When Erlene transitioned to healthcare, she continued to enjoy puzzles and value the relationships with the CNAs. And I'm going to invite Beverly to come and receive her rose. And we light this candle in honor of Erlene. It's a beautiful picture of her we have when she was younger. Yeah. Dan Yates and Helen moved into Covenant Woods in 2015. Betty Joe. It was Betty Joe and not Helen, yeah. In 2015, Mr. Yates loved singing with the Creaky Crooners, eating and laughing with fireside friends, and offering gardening advice to anyone with a plot at Covenant Woods. Mr. Yates had a green thumb and loved nurturing color and life to creation. If you ever happen to walk around the Williamsburg Garden or some of these cottages on campus, whenever you see the irises in bloom, those are probably planted by Mr. Yates. And so we celebrate his love for gardening and his friendship at Covenant Woods as we remember him. And I'm going to invite either Carl or Betty Joe up to receive his rose. Yeah, go ahead. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So he helped you out with that, huh? Yeah, that sounds like Mr. Yates. Yeah. So you're one of the cottages that had the irises. Yeah. Garland or Skip and Leslie Sidner both passed away this year. And Garland, they came in 2014, Garland and Les, or Skip and Leslie. Mr. Sidner enjoyed the community fireside chats and walking his dog, Jake, if you knew his dog, Jake. If you ever had the opportunity to talk with him about his work, he was very proud of the work he did for Ginter Park and Botanical Gardens and the water ponds and the pools and helping set those up in that area. When on healthcare, Mr. Sidner often sat with a medical cart, keeping an eye on the nurses up in healthcare. When I think of Leslie, I think of her enthusiastic energy, her interest in meeting a new person, and her love of laughter and art. When living in independent living, if you knew Leslie, nobody was a stranger to Leslie. Leslie was quick to get in the conversation and share a laugh. While on healthcare, Leslie enjoyed every opportunity to participate in art projects, especially with colored pencils. And when the Sidners moved to healthcare, they donated their statue of the horse that used to be right in the front of the cottage. That's now in the assisted living courtyard, and so it's brought a majestic flair to the courtyard in assisted living. And so we light the candles for Skip and Leslie in honor of what they have brought to our community. Barbara Pearson and Mr. Pearson came to Covenant Woods, Calvin, in 2015. Mrs. Pearson enjoyed the weekly bridge games. She attended some of the exercise programs and enjoyed quiet opportunities to read. On pretty days, she also enjoyed sitting outside and taking in the beauty around campus. And a very quiet person, a nursing background, and understood when she went to healthcare, seeing things around her, was supportive in many ways while in healthcare by her very presence. And so we light this candle in honor of Miss Pearson. Is anybody here for Miss Pearson? Oh, come, okay, I didn't reckon. Come on forward. Yeah. Is your Julie? It's her daughter, Julie. Yeah, thank you, Julie. Yeah. Dr. Charles Sweezy, Charlie, and Emmy came to Covenant Woods in 2015, and it wasn't uncommon to see Dr. Sweezy and his wife, Emmy, taking their daily walks around the grounds. They both enjoyed the ponds and the front gardens. Charlie Sweezy was also known for the fireside staff for his daily breakfast order. I think he was nicknamed 802 because he didn't want to, they opened at 8, but he didn't want to call it 8 because he wanted them to kind of get settled first, and so he would call it 8:02 every morning, and so they came to call him 802 for that reason. But he enjoyed talking to staff, and he enjoyed getting to know the staff and residents as well around campus. He was known for his beloved sense of humor and his love for laughter, and a compassionate and caring and good listener as well. When he wasn't out and about, Dr. Sweezy was squirreled away in his study working on, he was professor at UTS, so he's working on a book on Reinhold Niebuhr. Was it Reinhold or Richard? Reinhold Niebuhr, while he wasn't out and about. And I've learned recently that Hal Wolof usually was a double for Dr. Sweezy. For many people mistook the two of them because they were involved together in a previous lifetime at UTS. We light this candle in honor of Dr. Charlie Sweezy, and I'm going to ask that Emmy and Mary, her daughter, receive the rose for Dr. Sweezy. Sue and Lee Schaefer, her husband, moved to Covenant Woods in 2009. Lee passed away last year. Sue enjoyed the music programs here. She cherished her close connections with neighbors along Bradford Cottage. She was also part of the Covenant Woods Choir. She loved to sing. She was involved in the exercise activities and enjoyed her dinner friends and tradition. When Sue came to healthcare, she became a supportive and positive influence on the staff. She was always appreciative and grateful for her care and brought a wonderful spirit there as well. And is Jenna here, or anybody for Sue Schaefer? Okay. They live out of town, so it would be difficult. So we light this candle in honor of Sue, in remembrance of her presence in our community. Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, you can tell from the picture she's very pretty. You're right. Yeah, and you are too, Miss Dale. You are too. Yeah. Yeah. Marie Blatt moved to Covenant Woods in 2007. Miss Blatt enjoyed the friends that she made at dinner, meeting new table mates, and then attending special programs. She also enjoyed participating also in the Covenant Woods Choir. Having taught, she especially enjoyed anything to do with children or music programs, and she was very much involved in outreach activities before coming to Covenant Woods, and wanted to be a part of that here as well. And so we light this candle in honor of Marie Blatt. Is anybody here for Marie Blatt? Okay. Yeah. And what she brought to our community. Yeah, Mrs. Pettigo, Johnny Pettigo, came to healthcare in 2020, which when you think about it, that's a tough time. COVID was going on during that time. She came in just a couple of weeks before COVID started and we had our lockdown. And by the time Mrs. Pettigo moved to healthcare, she wasn't able to interact clearly, but much of her time was spent navigating her surroundings. But her very spirit, you could tell she had an active spirit there. I understand that before she came to Covenant Woods, Miss Pettigo was a real estate agent. She was very good with people, and she even made her last sale in real estate when she was 92 years old. So if she had been able, I believe Mrs. Pettigo would have brought a spirit of hospitality to our community and energy as well. And I'm going to ask that Terry, her son, if he could receive her candle. As we light this candle, we do so in honor of her presence in our community. And Ethel McDaniel, Miss McDaniel initially moved into assisted living, and right away Miss McDaniel brought a lot of enthusiasm to the activities and an interest in being with people. She was very grateful for staff and made everyone who knew her feel like they were a friend. Before coming to Covenant Woods, Miss McDaniel had a connection with the Covenant Woods volunteering with the Shady Grove Fellowship Committee to bring the monthly luncheons for Shady Grove residents here at Covenant Woods. So she had a connection there before. But for activities and so forth, she brought a real energy and just a love for people, and will be deeply missed in that sense. And so I'm going to ask that her son, James, receive her rose. And we light this candle in honor of her presence with us in Manor East in healthcare. Wow. She's back there now. She was the last survivor. And her family. She's buried up there with, but at the graveside, this pastor mentioned 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, which was, when you're absent the body, you're with the Lord. And I firmly believe that in that instant when she took her last breath, that she was on the streets of gold with all her brothers and sisters. Thanks for sharing that, Jay, Mr. McDaniel. Virginia, Connie Beatty. Miss Beatty was with us only a short while in healthcare. She came also in 2022. And although she never had children, she was known in her community as one of the mothers of the neighborhood children. She enjoyed having the children over to play and to always give treats. If Mrs. Beatty had been able, I think she would have enjoyed an opportunity to meet other residents and also to celebrate anything with children. And we're going to light this candle in honor of Connie and her presence with us. Is anybody here for Mrs. Beatty? Yeah, okay. Dr. Pat Brown. Dr. Ed and Dr. Pat Brown moved to Covenant Woods in 2012, and Pat enjoyed playing bridge weekly, sometimes more than weekly, with her husband Ed. She also liked opportunities to learn new things and enjoyed time with friends. She was part of the Covenant Woods Book Club and other activities that provided opportunities to engage and learn more about each other. Pat was also a model of determination. With the help of her husband, Dr. Ed Brown, Pat didn't let limitations get in the way of her drive to connect, to have fun, and to keep connected and to learn. And so we light this candle in honor of Pat Brown, and I think Dr. Ed Brown is here. Yeah, there he is, and his daughter, yeah. Yeah. Phyllis Patton, Mrs. Patton came to Covenant Woods in 2018 on health care. Although Mrs. Patton came with several limitations, she possessed a positive outlook and was often gracious towards the staff. And even on her bad days, she was quick to say thank you and engage. She also enjoyed the musical programs and sitting in the sunshine. And her family was very present with her, and she valued that time to either go outside or to watch TV together. And she also enjoyed, she traveled a lot too before she came to Covenant Woods and enjoyed any kind of thing to do with travel. And so we light this candle in honor of Phyllis Patton. Is her sister, anybody from family here for Phyllis? Okay. Yeah. Charlotte Forrester. Both Mr. and Mrs. Forrester moved into assisted living in 2019. Charlotte was active with the Richmond Home for Ladies, which is the facility or the community that was before Covenant Woods. She was on that guild and the Covenant Woods Guild as well. She also served on the board of directors of Covenant Woods. And Charlotte was always interested in helping people, especially people in need of extra support. She strived to serve as an advocate for others and bring a little laughter and fun to life. As a teacher, she spent many years teaching and supporting the youth, and she brought that same energy to our community. While on health care, Charlotte modeled a positive attitude and determination. Whatever hurdle she had to face, she took it on with fortitude and faith. So we light this candle in honor of Charlotte. Is Rach in here, or any family members, or anybody from the Guild? The Guild? Okay, could you receive Charlotte? Oh, right. Oh, okay, thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay was in recreation here at Covenant Woods, what, 10 years ago? Yeah. 2007. Oh, no, okay. That's, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay's also part of the Guild in honor. Carnegie Bud Hammersley. Mr. and Mrs. Hammersley moved to Covenant Woods in 2012. They both were our competitive team and played duplicate bridge together as a team, which was not Bud's favorite thing, but whatever he wants to do, he'd put his mind to. He didn't do anything halfway. And believe it or not, the Hammersleys captured the most wins one year, which was not an easy thing to do because I think during that year we had some people playing that had written books about bridge. Mr. Hammersley also enjoyed the routine of sitting on his balcony and watching people come and go, reading and laughing with friends around at fireside. Mr. Hammersley had a wonderful wit and the ability to see the humorous side of things and put a word phrase to it. If you were ever driving through the parking lot around noon, you probably saw Mr. Hammersley in the rain, sleet, or snow going for his daily run to Arby's, McDonald's, or Wendy's. Not because he loved the fast food, but he loved cars, and so he loved to get in the car and just drive. And so I'm going to invite Mrs. Hammersley and her son to come and receive the rose for Bud. And we light this candle in honor of Bud and what he brought to our community. Ruth Erickson. Miss Erickson moved to Covenant Woods, I was thinking in 2008 or somewhere around there. Yeah. She had a welcoming presence that enjoyed meeting new people. Ruth also possessed a strong sense of faith and mission, having grown up in a missionary family. If you ever visited Ruth, you couldn't help but notice all the Asian art and items in her room, which was a reflection of her family's work with orphans in China. Ruth also loved to sing. In fact, one day I asked her, what would you do if you had another time to live life through? And she said, I'd be an operatic singer. She loved to sing. And she was also part of the Covenant Woods Choir as well. And I'm going to invite her daughter to receive her rose in honor of Ruth as a resident here at Covenant Woods. And we light that candle in honor of Ruth. Yeah, thank you, Dave. Yeah. Yeah, Rose Ogborn and Willie Rigsby, they also both passed away this year, and they came to Covenant Woods in 2015. Before coming to Covenant Woods, Mrs. Ogborn loved sewing and the outdoors and gardening. She possessed a positive outlook on life that was often welcoming and accepting of others. When Mrs. Ogborn transitioned to a higher level of care, she seemed to take each change with a sense of openness and wonder. She was involved in the activities on health care and seemed to always bring a welcoming smile to all the activities. And Mr. Rigsby came to Covenant Woods at the same time, and he was active in taking care of his different properties. He was still very much working into his late 80s and early 90s. He continued his work for much of this time here at Covenant Woods, and when possible, he enjoyed meeting new people at Fireside. He possessed a true interest in learning about other people and sharing his own stories. In fact, I was told on some occasions when his declining balance was still very much a lot of money in it, he would go to Fireside and give dessert for everybody that was in Fireside and make just a donut. Anybody receive those desserts that you remember that? Yeah, some of you, yeah. Yeah, so we light this candle in honor of both Rose Ogborn and Willie Rigsby. Is Don here today? Don, I think he lives out of the area. Yeah, okay. Olive Litwit-Notwich. Olive and Stanley, her husband, moved to Covenant Woods in 2001. Olive brought a welcoming, enthusiastic spirit to Covenant Woods. She had a youthful spirit and a flair for fashion conscience. She loved being a part of things. She was quick to laugh and share a story or make a comment. In fact, Olive's nephew pointed out in her service that in looking over family event photos, it was difficult to find a picture of Olive when she was not talking. I know when I came to Covenant Woods and attended events, I found Olive's energy contagious. Olive was a member also of the Covenant Woods Choir. And is Jody or Bobby or Gladys here or anybody? Okay. And then there's some distance as well. So we light this candle in honor of Olive and what she brought to our community. Yeah, Jimmy Ward. Jimmy and Mabel Ward came to Covenant Woods in 2014 as the lodge was opening. Mabel was sharing with me that they were the first ones to move into the lodge, and it was like a ghost town at first, and they helped get that organized. According to Mrs. Ward, Mr. Ward was looking forward to just taking it easy when he came to Covenant Woods. He enjoyed the opportunity to read historical novels and the newspapers. He loved sitting on his balcony, the third floor, looking over the front and viewing the people coming and going. Mr. Ward also enjoyed making friends at Fireside and the Vista. They went on to trips on the Covenant Woods bus to the concerts and theaters and other programs. In addition, he had his weekly card game of Hand and Foot with Hal and Jill Woloff and the other Hand and Foot gang here at Covenant Woods. And I'm going to ask that Mabel, if she would, and Karen, the daughter, if they would come and receive the rose for Jimmy Ward. Yeah. And we light this candle in honor of Jimmy and Mr. Ward and what he brought to our community. Mrs. Ward was also telling me that one of the goals was to travel to all 50 states. And this picture in the bottom is of them in Hawaii. Yeah. Mrs. Stevenson came to Covenant Woods in 2020 with her dog Spud. Mrs. Stevenson moved into Covenant Woods during the COVID pandemic as well, and it was difficult to make new friends during that time. Before coming to Covenant Woods, Mrs. Stevenson enjoyed sewing and woodworking, and if able, would have found camaraderie with the Nitwits and creative time in our woodworking shop if she'd been able. When Mrs. Stevenson transitioned to healthcare, she brought a curious, down-to-earth, honest presence that kept the staff on their toes. She loved the animals during pet therapy and moments in the sun. And we light this candle in honor of Mrs. Stevenson. And is anybody here from Mrs. Stevenson? I think she has nieces out of state, I believe, that weren't going to be able to make it. Yeah. Nancy Michaels. Al and Nancy moved to Covenant Woods in 2019. And when she wasn't reading or doing puzzles, Nancy enjoyed opportunities to eat at Fireside. She especially enjoyed connecting with the staff and hearing about their aspirations, especially if they were going into nursing. Being a critical care nurse herself, Nancy shared a special affinity for staff who were thinking about that kind of care. When she was able, Mrs. Michaels also enjoyed the I-Wing afternoon cocktail gatherings that provided a time for telling stories, laughing, and catching up on news. And I'm going to ask that Al, her husband, receive this rose as we light this candle in honor of Nancy Michaels and what she brought to our community. Nancy Dickinson. Nancy and Curtis moved to Covenant Woods in 2016. Nancy has spent her life working in the school system as a health and physical education teacher and a counselor, and so she loved the opportunity to walk outdoors around the ponds and the woods and in the front, especially enjoying the flowers and watching the ducks. Some of her hobbies included embroidery, reading, and walking out and the outdoors as well. And I think in another time, if she'd have been able, she would have enjoyed spending time with the Nitwick group as well. She also enjoyed meeting new people at Fireside and feeling very welcomed in this community. In fact, Curtis told me that she said to him quite often, we're where we need to be, which was a nice thing to say. And I'm going to ask that her son receive the flower for Miss Dickinson. And we light this candle in honor of Miss Dickinson and what she brought to our community. Curtis had to make a decision. They were having another All Saints service at St. Mary's, I think, that Catholic church, and so he was torn to go to the other service as well. Emma Jean Watson. Dirk and Emma Jean Watson moved to Covenant Woods in 2015, and while living at the lodge, Mrs. Watson enjoyed dining with friends and meeting new people at Fireside. She also enjoyed walking the grounds and sitting on the benches out in front of the campus and just meeting people. She had a quick smile and laugh that would lighten any moment. She loved dancing, appreciated, and was gifted in art, both in watercolors and oils and mostly water scenes. When Mrs. Watson transitioned to a higher level of care, she brought her positive attitude and continued sense of humor and laughter with the new residents. With the other residents. She was a willing and welcoming participant in many of the activities and made other residents feel welcomed and accepted and will be missed. And we're going to light this candle in honor of Mrs. Watson, and I'm going to invite Dirk to receive her husband, Dirk Watson, and his daughter. Mildred Longest came to Covenant Woods and to health care in 2022, and because of her health, Mrs. Longest wasn't able to connect to many of the residents or the activities. If she had been able, she would have probably shared her love for and pride for her family, her work at Broadus Baptist Church, and education, and her years of service in the schools, food service of Henrico County. She possessed a love for people and would have brought a nurturing spirit to our community if she had been able. And that's a picture of her family around her there. Is Carol here tonight? Carol, her daughter. Yeah. So we light this candle in honor of Mrs. Longest and what she brought to our community. Yeah. Dr. and Mrs. Kinley came to Covenant Woods in 2008. Betty brought her gift of public service to our community. As a nurse, she served on the Covenant Woods Health and Wellness Committee for years. She also enjoyed working in the gardens, which initially were not in the present location because it was in a different area. But when they started construction on the lodge, they had to think about removing the garden and putting it somewhere else. And Betty was instrumental in finding the area for the present garden up on top of the hill. She first did research on where the previous garden was for the Sells family who owned that property. She helped bring in topsoil and helped navigate putting the railroad beams for boundaries. Betty brought a spirit of pure activism to our community. Was always involved in whatever was going politically as well. There are other things as well as kind of very much involved in making communities better. And so I'm going to light this candle in honor of Betty Kenley and ask that Dr. Kenley receive, or her husband, Dr. Kenley, receive her rose. He's right here, Tom, in the front row. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll give this to you.
Florence, Peggy Coghill. When Peggy and Cal Coghill moved to Covenant Woods, Peggy was very much very active in exercise regimens. She would pull Cal along to the workout areas and the exercise equipment for years. And then eventually, when he passed, she got more involved in the morning exercise programs. Having volunteered at the Botanical Gardens, Peggy also enjoyed the beautiful flowers around Covenant Woods. If she wasn't on campus, she usually enjoyed shopping or going out to restaurants with her niece, Sherry. She enjoyed and seeing the town. Peggy also enjoyed newfound friends and traditions, especially befriending Edith Spires as one of her favorite table mates. As of late, you could always find Peggy sitting on the front porch in the afternoons. She would be one of the first welcoming, smiling faces you would see when you were entering the building. And so we light this candle in honor of Peggy Coghill. I'm going to invite her niece, Sherry Sprouse, to receive her rose. Her son, Bob, lives in Ohio, out of state, and was not able to make it. Yeah. And Mrs. Clark came to healthcare in 2021. And before coming to Covenant Woods, Mrs. Clark enjoyed working with dogs and horses, participating in field trial events and dog shows for many years. Whenever our therapy dog Jet came to visit, she would become very excited and just brought that beautiful smile. Mrs. Clark also enjoyed the activities of healthcare, especially the musical programs and playing balloon tennis. She was also very compassionate toward other residents as well. And we light this candle in honor of Mrs. Clark. Is Mr. Roundtree here or any family members for Miss Clark? Okay. Yeah, and we'll miss her as part of our healthcare community. When Wiley and Ellen Cross came to Covenant Woods around 2016, Wiley got involved in the watercolor classes and photography around our campus. And he just had a creative eye, and he captured this picture when they were starting to build. That's the lodge, the front of the lodge, and he just saw that dove in the picture, and so he brought that creative eye to us here at Covenant Woods. Wiley was also known for his sense of humor, his wit, and his quick laugh, along with his free hugs and kisses for the staff. My office is right there off G-Wing, and I could just hear him, I could just see him, I would hear him come down the hallway, always giving kisses to all the housekeeping and other staff he came across the way, just trying to share the love. Well, he also demonstrated the importance of service. He volunteered in healthcare for feeding the residents and with his welcoming presence. He was a UVA alumni. Wiley was a diehard UVA fan. You would always see his UVA colors whenever they were playing football or basketball. And he was also, as you can see from the picture, he loved to sail at a bigger part of his life up and down the river. And he had lots of sailing stories and storms and other kind of events that happened for him. And I'm going to ask his several family members. I'm going to ask Rob or who would like to receive his son, receive the flower for Wiley. And we light this candle in honor of Wiley and what he brought to our community in terms of service and love and affection. Dean Albright came to Covenant Woods in 2019 in healthcare, and Dean brought a welcoming presence to Covenant Woods. He was always interested in people and enjoyed getting to know new residents as they came up to healthcare. He loved to read. In the last couple of years, he spent time listening to old sermon tapes and reading and discussing theological questions with both me and the hospice chaplain. I know for me, before I ever left his room, he always asked me if he wanted to say a prayer, and then he would pray for me and give me a blessing, which I appreciated. Yeah, I think he saw his time here as a time of ministry. And I'm going to ask, is Beth Ann Sloan here, his daughter? Did she? Okay. All right. Well, we'll light this candle in honor of Dean and what he brought to our healthcare community. And this is Richard Cooley. Yeah, Richard Dick Cooley moved into Covenant Woods in 2022. Mr. Cooley gave a boost to the assisted living men's table with his enthusiastic, engaging energy and varied stories and passionate faith. If you ever happen to visit Mr. Cooley's room, he was quick to share the interesting art and his many travels. Mr. Cooley also enjoyed meeting new people and the different activities that the recreation offered here, and was only with us for a short while. Is anybody here for the Cooley family? Yeah, okay. Well, we light this candle in honor of Mr. Cooley and what he brought to our assisted living community for the men's group. Dr. and Mrs. King came to Covenant Woods in 2015, and when Mrs. King came to Covenant Woods, she wasn't as active and engaging as in previous years. If she had been able, she may have been quick to get involved in the many committees and activities, because before coming to Covenant Woods, Mrs. King found pleasure in gardening and sewing and would have enjoyed the Nitwit group as well. Mrs. King also was a great organizer. Dr. King was head of the Department of Business Administration at Virginia Tech, which is one of the largest departments at Tech, and had over 50 faculty, and Mrs. King had the responsibility of hosting events and working with faculty recruitment. And so she had a very hospitable presence and was able to connect with faculty very well. Mr. King shared with me that Helen would take on many projects that she didn't know anything about, but she would just jump right in and learn as she went along the way. Had that kind of character. Is Bob King here, or his son? Yeah. If you can give the rose to him in the very back, Tom. Yeah. And so we light this candle in honor of Mrs. King and all the gifts that she had, and before coming to Covenant Woods, and what she brought to our community. Mr. Grant came to Covenant Woods in 2019, and initially he moved to independent living and then transitioned through our different levels of care. And while here, he enjoyed reading and would have enjoyed playing different card games at an earlier time. Mr. Grant had a storied past flying military planes and would have enjoyed spending time with our other residents that were flyers here. He even launched a Minute missile as part of his military training when he was working. And we light this candle in honor of Mr. Grant and what he brought to our communities. Anybody here for Linwood Grant? Oh, good, yeah. And Louise Mitchell moved to our health care in 2022. And during her time here, she was confined to her bed, but her interest in people and her hospitable personality that worked with students as a registrar for the School of Medicine at MCV and VCU, it came out with our staff. She had a special friendship with Lauren Garrett, a recreational manager who tried her best to move her bed to the balcony so she could get some sunshine. And so they had a special relationship with many of the staff. When Mrs. Mitchell was having a good day and didn't have visitors, she was usually on her phone talking to family. She would watch her detective shows or the Hallmark Channel or the QVC channels. And so we light this candle in honor of Mrs. Mitchell. I'm going to invite Ray, her husband, to receive her rose. And we'll miss her in our community. Yeah, I understand that when she was at VCU, many of the students called her Mama in some ways because she gave a lot of guidance in the transitional times of her life. Charles and Joan Russell came to Covenant Woods in 2015. Charles enjoyed eating with friends at fireside and discussing the events of the world. His work was pretty much, he traveled all over the world and had friends in many different areas, and he had lots of stories to share and spent much time keeping up with those connections. He had his weekly lunch gathering with his grandsons as well. Charles had a long history with Covenant Woods. Before coming here, he volunteered at the Richmond Home for Ladies as a young man, and while he was volunteering, his future wife, Joan, came with her church to sing. The church was coming to sing in the choir, and that's how they met and eventually got married. So Covenant Woods had something to do with the new matrimony with their family. And so we light this candle in honor of Charles Russell. Is Wendy